Frederick Buechner. It seems like as I get older, I pronounce words less and less efficiently. So if I massacred his name, Frederick, I apologize. Frederick Buechner. Buechner. He wrote, "True vocation is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." And I like that. I'm going to say that again. True vocation is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. As I mentioned earlier, today is our annual traditional Sunday service, when we get our religious education program up and going. And normally this is a fully intergenerational service with the kids upstairs, and we do some out of the box activities, and they really wanted to make ice cream today. And that's okay, because that is truly intergenerational, and Bill is nodding his head that really he's looking forward to the homemade ice cream. But what I do want to do, even though I'm speaking to not mostly adults, it looks like all adults here, I want us to hear these words today through the paradigm or the prism of how do we truly integrate all of the generations into who we are as human beings on lifelong journeys of exploration, growth, and faith. And so as I speak today and I talk about different things, I invite you to just think about the different phases of your life. What was your life like as a child? As a teenager? As a young adult? As a middle-aged adult? As a maturing adult? How many of you want to be the same person in 5 years that you are today? In 10 years? How many of you have the same understanding of God or ultimate reality as an adult that you had as children? How many of you feel that your faith or sense of spirituality or grounding is stronger now than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Or is it more shaky? Are you on a more shaky foundation than you were 20 or 30 years ago? What brings hope in your life? How do you make meaning? And if you take some time to reflect on it, is the way that you make meaning today the same way that you made meaning out of your life as a teenager or a young adult? And do you think that the way that you make meaning out of your life in 10 or 20 years from now will be the same as today? My hope today is that when you go home, you'll continue to think about some of these questions and just reflect on who you are, who you've been, who you're becoming, and how do the different phases or the tapestry of our life interact with each other. And as I was thinking about this sermon last night, I came across a letter that I actually wrote to myself about 8 years ago. And my 42-year-old self wrote a letter to my 25-year-old self. And that 25-year-old self was just starting ILIF, just deciding that she wanted to maybe become a minister. And I was looking back, having come out of, I was kind of coming out of 2 years after post cancer and doing some reflection on my life. And so I thought, what would I, as a 42-year-old, tell this young adult who's just beginning her career? And I have to admit, it was a pretty good letter. I kind of liked what I wrote, but the first thing, and I don't remember writing. I mean, I remember doing the exercise, but I don't remember writing everything that I wrote, obviously. But the first thing that I said was, I think you'd like me. And so I guess at that point in time, I was thinking, would my 25-year-old self like the person I've become almost 20 years later? And that's, I think, an interesting thing to contemplate. Would the various people throughout our lives who we have been, would we recognize each other? Would we relate to each other? Would the little girl Wendy be looking up to the almost 50-year-old Wendy as a person of wisdom, as a safe place to go? Are there parts of me, would the teenager like the 25-year-old? Are there times in our lives when who we have been throughout this course, this tapestry, really would resonate and we would support? Or are there times that we might have some conflict and say, nope, this person who I was now is not a person I would resonate back then? It's just, for me, it's just an interesting exercise to think about. And as we think about the future, who we are now, will our past selves like our future selves? Do we have things that actually, if we would remember who we were 25 or 30 years ago, that those younger versions of ourselves could actually remind us and teach us a few things that we may have forgotten now? And likewise, do we have some wisdom that we could go back and teach or give to our younger selves? And if we do, if we have value in who we are now and who we have become, is it maybe worth it to look at the younger children, teenagers, young adults in our life and be willing to share some of that as they are going through their different phases of life also? And I know that these questions might feel a little bit odd, considering that it's Sunday, and I'm supposed to be talking about our children's program. But at the same time, I titled this sermon, The Tapestry of Life, because it's all connected and integrated. We are always in relationship to who we have been and who we are in the process of becoming. And the same is for our children. In general, and I do believe what I've seen over the last 20 years or so, I think it's changing a little bit, but in general, I would say that we are kind of a death-defying culture. And in many respects, we are an age-defying culture. And like I said, I believe that's changing, but for the most part, we are still a society that tends to cling on to the need to look and feel younger. We dye our hair, we pluck our whiskers, we get facelifts. It doesn't actually change our chronological age, but maybe it changes how we feel about ourselves in the mirror, perhaps a little bit. So here's my question for us to ponder. Is it possible that aging might be something to look forward to? And I guess I'll ask for a show of hands. Does anybody look forward to getting older? Okay, there's a few hands going up. Um, if you grimaced, my invitation for you is to contemplate why. Why do we automatically assume that getting older or aging is something to fear or dread or push against? Why not have it be something to embrace? Because we know more, we've lived more, we have more wisdom. How many of us would like to go back and be a teenager again? There are a few hands going up, a few laughs, a few shaking heads. I'm looking at what some of my kiddos are going through, and I think I'm kind of glad that I'm on the other side of that, because it can be hard and it can be scary and it can be lonely. And I'm glad that a lot of us, well, most of us, all of us here, we're here, we made it through, but it wasn't easy for all of us. And not all of the phases of life are ever going to be easy. And so today, I just think it's important for us to really think about what it means to embrace a fully authentic, well-rounded human life. And that's what a tapestry is. A tapestry has panels with all of the phases of life. It has the early childhood and the family of origin that we're born into, and it has growing into young adults and the teenagers, and then we go into our vocation, and vocation is not always a paid career. A vocation, like he said, is where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. That can be motherhood, fatherhood. That can be devoting your life to the environment and making the world beautiful. That can be your artistic, creative expression. And my invitation today is, are you, at whatever phase of life that you're in, are you embracing your inner vocation? Is it something that allows you to express joy and be fully authentically human? And do you even know what that is? And if you don't know what that is, maybe it's time to take a little bit of time and give yourself the gift to think, what is my deep inner gladness? Where can I express joy in my life that can be a gift to the world? And if you know what that is, but you're not expressing it, my invitation today is to think about, why not? What are the obstacles or the layers that we put upon ourselves that don't allow us to breathe into that fully authentic sense of self, vocation, and joy that is in our lives? And if we're resisting against something that our heart or our spirit or our soul is asking us to do, what if we decide to just be a little bit gentle with ourselves and say, we can start, I can start slowly. If I'm a photographer, I may not have time to spend my whole life doing photography, but I can go take a few pictures and I can have some joy with those photographs. If I'm an artist or a painter, I can go get some paints and I can sit down for 15 minutes a day and start allowing my creative expression. If I'm a writer, while you're in your car, start thinking about poetry and let it just come through you. There's always a way to allow your inner sense of need to be expressed with who you are in this moment and who you are becoming. And I think we have a tendency, at least I know I do, we have a tendency to look back at our lives and maybe romanticize who we once were. Maybe we're not romanticizing our teenage years, but maybe we're romanticizing who we were in our 20s and how free we felt, or how much joy we felt, or how we didn't have children yet, so there was no stress. But then we tend to also forget that we didn't really have a career established, or we weren't totally secure with who we were, or we hadn't met our life partner or whatever, and it wasn't always as perfect as we romanticize. And we sometimes do that to our future self. Well, someday I'm going to be like this. Someday I'm going to be happy. Someday I'm going to have the house that I want, or the partner that I want, or the time that I think that I need. And we put it onto the future. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to learn from the past and forgive ourselves for the past. And I think it's okay to have visions and visualize what we want in the future, but we can't forget who we are in the present, because that's all we have. We have this moment in time right now, and it's where we are, and it's who we are, and who are we within that. And so I've shared this a few times, but I had an aha moment a few years ago. I guess it hasn't been a few years now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, when one of our beloved elders, his name was Bill Timer, he passed away, and we were doing his memorial service here. And I was talking with his daughter, and what she said to me really impacted me. She said, you know, my father was so busy. He was in the military, and he was a psychologist, and he was doing his career and his vocation, and he worked hard. He said the best friends he ever made, he made in his 80s. And that just went into my heart, because we're never too old to make new friends, to open our hearts up, to be fully and authentically alive and human and vulnerable, and letting other people see us and seeing other people. And I always tear up just a little bit when I tell that story, because I know who he was referring to, and he was referring to a number of men in this congregation who became his best friends. And some of those men are still here, and some of those men have also passed away now. But I just, the first time I said that, Dwayne Carr was sitting right there in that front row. And I know that Bill and Dwayne were so close. And I just made eye contact with Dwayne that day, and he started tearing up. And then I started tearing up. And then we were both tearing up, but it was because it was just so beautiful and so moving and so authentic and so real, and such a life lesson to me, that we are never, ever too old to be at the stage of life where we can be truly and authentically alive and in relationship and experiencing friendship and joy and connection and love. And that's what I want this congregation to be to one another, to understand with one another, and with our kiddos downstairs. that they are building friendships with each other that hopefully will last decades, generations, because we're always growing and we're still here generations later. And so I don't know. I've totally gone off script now. But I just want to say I'm grateful for that tapestry of life. I'm grateful for the generations that are here. I'm grateful for the children. I'm grateful for the teenagers. I'm grateful for the 20-year-olds and the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds and the 80-year-olds and the 90-year-olds. And we are here together and we all need each other. And we all need each part of ourselves that we have all lived through. Every one of us here has lived through childhood. Is that child still part of your life? We've all lived through the teenage years. Is that teenager still part of your life? Is the young adult who you used to be still part of your life? Are you making room for the person who you're going to become in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years? And are you allowing that future person to be part of your life? And if not, is it possible that part of us is missing? I'm just throwing that question out. I don't know, but it's something to reflect on. And if you feel like throughout the years, throughout the decades, you might have lost a part of who you used to be that you kind of miss, bring that person back, invite them back, bring in some younger version of yourself, bring in some of the laughter, the art, the joy, the music, invite it back in. I'm gonna allow us to just sit with this for a moment. And I'm gonna close with some words from, like I said, one of my favorite people, Dwayne. Not everybody over the years that has joined the church in the last few years knows Dwayne, but he was kind of, Dwayne and Arlita, along with many others, were kind of the heart and soul of this congregation for a long time. And Dwayne loved to talk to me about his spiritual journey and his faith and his understanding of God. And his wife Arlita was a staunch atheist. And so it was fun watching the two of them interact. And he said, when I was, we were putting together Arlita's memorial service, and Dwayne said, Arlita decided that she was an atheist and she was just done with it. I'm still not finished with it. I'll die one of these days, and I still won't be finished. I don't think we're ever finished. And so wherever you find yourself in this journey called life, open your heart, open your mind, open your arms, and open your life. Amen.